And once again, our next question will change things up a bit, as Chris has a personal question for me. He writes, who was the first person you ever saved? Or who was the first person you failed to save? Well, oddly enough, the same story answers both questions, though either case applies to different people. When I was a teen, I used to love to wander different parts of Chicago. I suppose that habit hasn't left me, really. But one afternoon, I was sitting at a bench in Grande Park near Buckingham Fountain. There was this little girl running around the fountain, screaming. No parent or guardian was anywhere in sight to tell her to stop. A few others were near the area at the time, probably likely in part to the girl's behavior, keeping them away. But there was a street artist nearby. He was an older man with a bucket full of chalk. Earlier in the day, he'd created a beautiful sidewalk rendition of Seurat's Sunday on le Grand Jatte. The little girl, as she ran and screamed, crossed the man's artwork several times, damaging the chalk mural before it had even been a few hours old. As she kept running and screaming, the old artist drew a set of stairs that descended into some dark underground. In the shadows, at the bottom of the stairs, you could tell there was some monstrous creature lurking, waiting. I was seated behind him, and he didn't notice me watching him create his second mural. As he finished it, and as the girl came screaming around the corner, he grabbed her wrist and threw her down the chalk-drawn stairwell. For a moment, the stairs were real, then merely art again. I ran over. With a brush, the street artist was furiously scrubbing the stairs away. In the mural, a chalk rendition of the girl soundlessly screamed, trapped in the static image. The menacing thing in the darkness at the bottom of the stairs crept closer to her. The art requires feeding, the old man said, as if that somehow justified what he'd done. Get her out of there, I said, but the old street artist shook his head. The art must be fed, he insisted. We exchanged more words, which quickly escalated. I can't remember who struck who first, but I hit him such that he stumbled back. His foot fell upon the stairs he'd drawn, and he tumbled backwards, down into his chalk creation. Without thinking, and though it made no rational sense, I reached my hands into the art and pulled the girl out. She was quiet now. I couldn't get a response from her. I looked back down into the mural as I tried to get her to affirm to me that she was okay. A shadowy tendril had wormed its way around the old man's leg. The expression on his face was clearly begging me to pull him back out too. I reached down to attempt to do this, but water splashed over the mural. The girl had leapt into the fountain as soon as my eyes were off her. The art was now blurred. I could hardly make out the man's features, but nearly his whole body was now embraced by the creature in the shadows. I told the girl to stop, that we needed to do what was right, to get the man out of the mural too, despite what he'd done. But she stared at me blankly. The art must be fed, she told me. She picked up the brush the old man had been using to scrub the mural away and now began this task herself. In almost no time, the mural was gone, and the old man with it. I was in such shock over everything that had just occurred, I barely noticed when the girl slipped away, and that she'd taken the bucket of chalk with her. Now, when I wander the city, I look for her, or anyone like her, anyone creating the art that must be fed. I look for them, but there's a part of me that hopes I never find them. Well, there you have it. Success and failure. Both in a single afternoon at the park. Of course, Suraz's Sunday on La Grande Jatte hangs at the Art Institute here in Chicago. Because of that day at Buckingham Fountain, I always avoid that painting.